It's not the rice pudding my mother made, and it's not Greek rice pudding. This is Greg's rice pudding. So we start with cinnamon sticks. Most rice pudding recipes have water and milk. I use whole milk and heavy cream. I like my rice pudding creamy. I like it like a pudding. That's why they call it rice pudding. This is the way I make it. It's not the right way, it's not the wrong way. It's just the way I make rice pudding. I like it creamy and delicious, just like my tapioca. I got 3 cinnamon sticks in here. I got a gallon of milk. I'm going to put in about 2 teaspoons of salt. When you make desserts, a little bit of salt brings out the flavor. When I make my creme brulees, I put salt in them. Not a tablespoon, but just a whisper. I got my rice. We're gonna add the heavy cream to it at this point. You can use half and half. Like I said, most rice pudding recipes have milk and water in them. It takes about 10 or 12 minutes for this to come to a simmer, and then we're gonna cut it down to a very low simmer, and we'll mix once in a while. The reason why I use these cinnamon sticks is because it won't turn our rice pudding brown. That's why I don't use ground cinnamon. I use cinnamon sticks. You get the cinnamon flavor, but not the color. And if you want to sprinkle cinnamon on top when you're done, that's a beautiful garnish. Or you could sprinkle a little bit of nutmeg on top. If you want to fold in raisins, you can use the dark raisins or the golden raisins. But if you're going to use raisins, I suggest that you poach them in a little bit of sweet wine, like a marsala or a sherry, or even a brandy with a little bit of water in it. You want to flavor up those raisins when you reconstitute them. You want to just poach them enough so they get plump again, and then let them cool off in that liquid. Okay? And then you can fold those raisins in to your finished rice pudding. I love raisins, but I don't really care for them in my rice pudding. Again, this is the way I make my rice pudding. It's not the right way or the wrong way, but it's the way I make it. It's creamy, it's rich, it's delicious, and I know you're gonna love it. And like I said, your inclusions that you add to your rice pudding are all up to you. My mom used to put pomegranate seeds in. She used to put raisins in once in a while, but the raisins come in at the end. We're going to add vanilla, butter, and egg yolks at the end when this is cooked. You don't really want to put the vanilla in now because it'll kind of dilute it. We want to use it at the end. Anytime you make pastry cream or any dessert with vanilla, you usually add it at the end. When you're making toffee, you add vanilla at the end. When you're making whipped cream, anything that you're cooking, you usually want to use the vanilla at the end. Yeah, constant attention to stirring right now, because this milk and cream was cold. So as soon as we get it to temperature where it's just starting to get hot enough to boil, then we'll cut it down to low, and then we'll let it simmer on the stove. And you can't just walk away from it, but you can once in a while. You just have to stir it every once in a while. Now that we've started it, we can add our sugar. Yeah, at the beginning, when the milk is cold, what's going to happen if you're not stirring it is the rice is going to settle and it's going to scorch on the bottom of the pan, and you're going to have to start all over because there's no getting rid of that scorched flavor. You've got sugar in here now, so you have to worry about that settling to the bottom. That's why I wait for about 5 minutes until that milk starts to get warm, so I know that my sugar is going to dissolve right away. That's why I don't pour the sugar in right when I start. I don't want that sugar to drift to the bottom and scorch. And that's another reason why I like to use heavy cream or half and half, because it doesn't burn as easily as milk does. And I like my puddings rich and creamy. See how this is starting to steam? We want to get this to just about before it starts to boil, and then we're going to cut it way down to a low simmer and let this go about 25-30 minutes while we mix it every few minutes. Now we know that the sugar is dissolved. We know that the rice isn't going to be sticking to the bottom. Now, why I like to start with the cinnamon is as the milk gets hot, that cinnamon is releasing all its flavor. You notice that it's starting to unravel, which means it's starting to get soft. It's starting to let its oils out. But we don't have that brown bark in our rice pudding. It's staying nice and white. Now we're going to finish this rice pudding. We're going to richen it up at the end with a little bit of egg, butter, and vanilla. So I've got 4 eggs here. We're going to pour a little bit of our Ugandan vanilla. That rice is close. It's about 6 minutes. We're gonna add a half a pound of unsalted butter to this rice pudding at the end, just to give it a little extra richness. Again, this is not your grandma's rice pudding. What we're going to do is we're going to temper this egg mix with some of the milk from the rice pudding, so when we add it, it doesn't scramble the egg. So while we're mixing this liaison, that's what it's called, we're going to add some of the hot cream from the rice to warm it up, and then we're going to pour this all into the rice, turn the heat off and mix it, and it'll magically thicken the whole thing up. See how much this is steaming now, and we're starting to create some foam here at the top of the surface. This is the point where we go to super low. And now we're just going to barely simmer this cream mixture with sugar and cinnamon and a touch of salt, and we're going to let this cook now. And we'll come back to this every 2 or 3 minutes. Just give it a stir, make sure that the rice isn't sticking. You know, I'm working with a copper pot, which transfers heat. The inside is stainless steel, so I'm not turning my rice pudding gray. You don't want to make anything that's a white sauce or a pastry or a pudding in an aluminum pot, because it'll turn it gray. It'll give it that off-white color, and it's just unappetizing. So when you're working with puddings or cream soups, or any soup for that matter, you want to work out of stainless and copper, and it's healthier for you too. You know, every 2 or 3 minutes, you just give it a little mix. You'll be mixing those starches in there. Okay, it's been 25 minutes. I turned off the rice, and this is our liaison and butter for our rice pudding. It's at a very low simmer. It's just a bubble every 2 or 3 seconds. It's just a very light simmer. I use a long grain rice. If you use a short grain rice, then you really don't need the eggs at the end, because there's so much starch in that short grain rice. Like if you used a risotto, it would be the same amounts. You just wouldn't need the liaison at the end. I like the liaison on the end because it gives me a nice color, and it just richens it up a little bit more. It makes it more like a rice pudding to me. I can smell, it's got that sweet cinnamon smell, doesn't it? That's what you're looking for. You want this rice pudding to have a little hint of sweetness. Ceylon or Ceylon. You know, the Vietnamese cinnamon is very strong. It's very expensive, but it's very strong. And if you're using that one, I suggest you use half as much as the recipe calls for, because it's just so strong. I really like it. It's delicious, but I use the Ceylon. And there's more than just those 2 types of cinnamon, but those are the ones that are readily available for us. See how this is just barely bubbling? That's what you're looking for. Now, rice pudding is going to look a lot thinner than what it looks like after it has cooled off and set up. Don't be fooled. We'll show you how to check. Basically, you just want to make sure the rice is done. But you'll see, once we add the liaison of egg to it, it'll thicken right up. After it cools off, it'll be very thick. And then we'll mix it, and then we'll portion it into cups. So rice pudding is a day before type of preparation. You make this the day before. Now, you like it warm, then just let it sit on the counter for 2 or 3 hours and let that rice continue to absorb and develop. But the total cooking time on this is about 40 to 50 minutes, depending on how high your heat is, what type of rice you're using, how much cream, you know, if you're using water. You know, it's between a 40-50 minute window. But at the end of the day, you taste the rice to see if it's cooked. This rice pudding is looking awesome. It smells so good. I wish you could smell the cinnamon and the sweet milk. You can see the cinnamon sticks have opened up, so you know that we've gotten all that beautiful cinnamon flavor in here. The rice is done. So now we take out the cinnamon sticks. We turn our rice pudding off, okay? And we add some of that hot milk to this. Now, this rice pudding is not going to look like rice pudding right now because it needs to cool. As it cools, it'll thicken up. So now we've got this liaison warmed up as we're mixing all at once. It's got our vanilla, our eggs, the heat is off, and our unsalted butter. And then we mix this until the butter is melted and we're all done. Now, like I said, this doesn't look like rice pudding that you're used to seeing because it's still very hot. As it cools off, this will thicken up into a pudding. It all happens magically in the refrigerator. But start to finish on rice pudding, it's about an hour. And like I said, you can eat it warm, but you're gonna have to let it sit for a good 2 or 3 hours. And if you did a good job, you should have a clean bottom pot. As you can see, Zach, the bottom of my pan is clean. This tomorrow is gonna be pudding. We cover this with saran wrap and we let it refrigerate overnight. When we cover this, we poke a little hole so it can steam off. All right, this is our rice pudding. Notice how it thickened up. You want to get that really cooked rice on the bottom broken up into this nice cream. You use a little more rice, or you use a short grain rice, you get a thicker rice pudding. This is my pumpkin spice. It has cinnamon, clove, nutmeg, allspice, and ginger. So it's like a vanilla pudding with rice. There's so many different recipes for rice pudding, but this is the rice pudding I enjoy to eat. I like a lot of vanilla sauce in my rice pudding. I mean, I'll eat anybody's rice pudding, but this one is my favorite.